Hi, thanks for watching. Okay, so in this video, I'd like to talk about the case of Amanda Knox. Okay, this is a fascinating murder case. It is very troubling to me. Okay, and this has to do with the murder of Amanda's roommate. Okay, who was a British university student studying abroad and living in the same house as Amanda in Perugia, Italy. And this took place on the 1st of November of 2007. So it is a few years back. But this is actually to me one of the most fascinating murder cases that I've seen, probably since the OJ case. Okay, and in some ways, I think this is actually more interesting than the OJ case. Um, I think there are just a lot of complexities to this case, and I do think there's a lot of questions about Amanda. And on top of that, even if Amanda is somehow not guilty, okay, I think Amanda's personality is just as interesting, if not more interesting, than let's say Jodi Arias. Okay, just to just to give some context here. Um, I myself, I've got two angles on this. Okay, I've worked in a criminal defense for about 12 or 13 years. Okay, I used to be an attorney, and for about the last 12 or 13 years, I've been working as a legal researcher and as a litigation strategy consultant in criminal and civil litigation. Okay, and so I've done maybe four homicide cases. I've done an attempted murder case. I've worked on a lot of drug trafficking. I can't even remember all the and I've also done sexual crime cases I've worked on. So I can't even count all the criminal cases that I've worked on, and this one really stands out. I don't think I've seen personally. I haven't seen a case with this much complexity, and with a defendant who I think who is as problematic, I think, as Amanda is. Okay, so that's just my background. But just looking at it from the background of somebody who works in criminal defense, I can also see that the government in Italy, the prosecution, they committed so many mistakes. Okay, major mistakes. That if I was defending Amanda Knox, I would probably have two main feelings. Okay, number one, I would think I have a really difficult client. Okay, she has a very, very difficult personality. All right, and she gets herself more into trouble with her personality than maybe is actually in the actual evidence of the case. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is that if I were working on this case, on the defense team, I would say that the actual government of Italy, the actual prosecution team and the police investigators, they are giving me a great defense, okay, because they're making so many mistakes. Okay, so for example, if instead of just committing all these small town errors, okay, if this small town of Perugia, if the prosecutors and the investigators, if they had, let's say, connected with, like, say, Interpol, and gotten, like, say, experts from all over Europe to do like a much more, like, say, serious investigation, I think I would be more scared as a defense attorney. So I'm just going to leave that right there. The second angle I've got on this is that I myself have been diagnosed. I'm not proud to say this, but I have been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And part of the reason I do this channel is to kind of reach out, as far as like awareness of personality disorders and sort of the connection with either true crime or with, like, say, influencers and stuff like that, pop culture. But this case, I think, really raises I don't know, it's on my radar as a person who myself, have struggled with personality disorder. I can't say personally whether I think Amanda Knox actually has a personality disorder. Okay, just like with Jodi Arias, she was actually diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, okay, by the prosecution psychologist, right? But I think all of us who have seen Jodi Arias, okay, we see remarkable, I think, narcissistic symptoms, okay, and yet somehow she wasn't diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. So, it's really interesting because I myself, like, I don't have a big hang up about, like, say, hanging a full diagnosis on anybody. I think if you just have even just a couple of symptoms of a disorder, even if you don't actually have the disorder, if you just have a couple of characteristics, a couple of traits of a disorder, to me, that's enough to potentially be a problem. Okay. And so, for example, when I look at Amanda Knox, okay, I don't need to come to the conclusion that she has a full blown personality disorder. Okay. It's enough for me that I see a couple of traits, okay, and frankly, I think the traits I see in Amanda may even include traits of psychopathy, okay. Now that doesn't mean she's actually a psychopath. She doesn't have to be. I think if you just have one or two traits of a disorder in under certain conditions, that could be enough to cause a problem. Just like, for example, you could have a person who has no personality disorder whatsoever. You could have a person who doesn't even really have traits of really any personality disorder. But let's just say that person has a little bit of difficulty regulating their anger. Okay. So I'm not even talking about Amanda right now. Let's just say you're talking about some random person. And the only symptom they have is they have trouble regulating their anger, like anger management. But other than that, they're not arrogant. They're not, I don't know, they don't like exploit people. They're not narcissistic at all, but they have an anger management issue, right? Well, that right there, under the right conditions, okay, on, like, say, the perfect storm, okay, let's say they could get into some road rage incident, right? And they could end up killing somebody. And it would just be totally out of character, except that they had that one characteristic that they had, let's say, an anger management issue. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is that you don't need to have but just maybe one or two little issues in your personality. And without having an actual diagnosis, without having an actual personality disorder, potentially under the right conditions, something could happen, right? So that's kind of the way I want to look at Amanda. I don't need to come to the conclusion that she's a psychopath or that she's a narcissist. I can just focus on just maybe a couple of traits that I think cause me a lot of concern, right? It doesn't mean that I think she actually did anything, right? I still, honestly, I think this case was so messed up by the prosecution. Okay, I think it's going to be probably, we'll just never know. I think this will just remain a mystery. And I think Amanda is she's acquitted, and technically I don't think Italy really has a place to re-prosecute her, right? So this case is pretty much done. This case is in the history books, but what can we learn from it? Okay, and honestly, I can be honest, like, I don't know for sure if she's guilty, right? I don't know that, but I have a lot of concerns. I have a lot of concerns and I have a lot of doubts. For me, this case remains wide open. And personally, if I was, like, say, involved in this case as a legal professional, I would not rule out Amanda's involvement in this murder. I mean, I can't, right? So anyway, but just looking back on this, I guess the first problem that I have with this case, okay, is, and this really bothered me a lot. Okay, when I watch, let's say, the documentaries, and when I look at how the prosecution started to form its early theories, okay, the thing that really bothers me about this case is the prosecution. To me, they seem to be coming very, very quickly, trying to form a theory of the case very, very quickly. Okay, to me, a better way to investigate a case is not to come to any conclusions. Okay, just to take information without coming to quick conclusions. Okay, and what I see in this case is I see that the prosecution was very eager to try to summarize and sort of create, like, say, an explanation for this case, as opposed to just taking the information. Okay, so what do I mean by that? One of the first things that really bothered me about this case was that when they found Meredith's body, okay, they found her body covered with a duvet, with, like, say, a blanket, right, a big blanket. And basically, they just immediately came to the conclusion that this must have been a woman covering her, okay, because a woman would be embarrassed to see her semi-nude, and they'd want to sort of cover it. It would just sort of be that typical modesty of a woman, not to leave another woman naked or something like that. Okay, and it's funny because when I first saw that crime scene, okay, I could think of other ways to explain Meredith's positioning and how Meredith appeared under the blanket. Okay. When combined with the severity of her injuries, right, it also occurred to me that whoever had killed Meredith had killed her with a rage. This was like a rage killing, okay? And it wasn't just a rage killing, but it was like a destruction killing, right? Like a destruction killing, okay? And so when I think of somebody wanting to destroy another person, okay, one of the things that occurs to me is it's like you're throwing them away like they were garbage. Okay, like you're destroying and making garbage out of a person, right? And so when I saw Meredith under that blanket, it also occurred to me that it was kind of like she was at the bottom of a heap of garbage, right? It just occurred to me. I'm not saying I don't have an alternative theory. I'm just saying there's a lot of other ways to interpret this, right? So if you see Meredith's body as sort of being left as like a piece of garbage underneath a pile of garbage, right? You could also say that, okay, that would change the whole picture of the crime, right? And so instead of, trying to imagine that the person who killed her actually had like sympathy for her as a naked person and as a woman, was like almost like caring for her, you could almost look at it as this was like a rage killing, right? And and if you think of the person killing, like, say, as having like a whole different attitude towards Meredith, where they kind of want to destroy her and leave her as a piece of garbage, all right, imagine how that would totally change the prosecution's theory, right? Because right now we're left with a very cumbersome, very uncomfortable theory, and the state sort of attached themselves to this theory, okay, that this was a sex crime, that this was a sex murder, that this was sexual, that this had all kinds of sexual overtones. When, if you could just change it a little bit, it might be that it may appear to have some sexual overtones. There may be appear to have some sexual, but really the actual motive for this killing was to destroy someone and leave them like a piece of garbage. Okay. And I think these are really important things, because when you change just a little bit the theory of the motive, okay, it's going to change a lot how you fit the facts of the crime to the potential suspects, right? So the first thing that occurred to me is that the person who actually did get convicted of this killing, all right, was Rudy Gede. Rudy Gede is a person from the Ivory Coast, a West African who was, let's say, raised, I think, as an adopted person in Italy. So he speaks Italian, and he's kind of like a cultural Italian, you know. And it is true that this guy, Rudy Gede, that he did have a history of, like, say, minor crimes, like breaking into houses, stealing things, right? But there's nothing in Rudy's history that shows that he has, like, say, like serious psychosexual problems, or has like tremendous rage towards women, whatever. So I don't see that as like standing out, right? He has criminal history, but I don't see his criminal history as being consistent with like a rage killing, or like a trashing killing where he trashes somebody and leaves them like a piece of trash, right? So if I were an investigator, I would leave everything on the table. You never know. It could have been a sex killing, right? But it also looks like it's kind of like a destruction trashing killing, where you're sort of trashing somebody. And so in my opinion, I would be concerned, okay, that Rudy doesn't really have the profile for that kind of rage killing, right? He doesn't seem to have the profile. So the other thing too is that knife killing is very intimate, right? It's very intimate, and it involves a lot of like really like personal feelings, right? So I would definitely want to keep on the table like anybody who is close to Meredith, right? Who might have a lot of personal feelings, okay, personal feelings against Meredith, right? So when you look at it that way, and you sort of get the sex part a little bit off the table, and bring more, like, say, the hatred and the rage, okay, and then you can start like narrowing down, I think, a more accurate theory, and maybe that way, I think we can avoid, let's say, a prosecution that's pushing a theory that doesn't really fit the truth of the case, right? So if I were investigating this case, Amanda would have been a top suspect, because Meredith hadn't been in Italy very long at the time. She had only been there just a few months. So she only had a chance to get really, really close just to a very few people. And obviously part of that inner circle for Meredith would be Amanda and other roommates, right? So I would want to kind of look at them, and take a close look at just, kind of examining their relationships and all that, right? Like how they were getting along and all that. Okay, and this is where I have the first problem with Amanda Knox, right? Because consistently, even looking back after years, okay, Amanda cannot be honest. She just cannot be honest and just come out and say, I did not get along with Meredith, right? She just can't do that. I mean, she's tried to hedge it, where she says, oh, she was my friend, but we weren't the best of friends. And she kind of tries to present this thing of kind of a vanilla relationship where, everything was just kind of, like, oh, there wasn't any problem. And so it's clear to me that Amanda is definitively concealing, okay, and really minimizing the fact that they really did not get along. Okay, they really did not get along. Okay, and there were other issues between Meredith and Amanda, where Meredith was like showing up Amanda, like, say, they both worked at a bar, or at least they had something to do with a bar, where Amanda was like, working part-time. And apparently Meredith was like doing a better job of making drinks. And also I think the owner of the bar liked her more. Okay. And so just now, you wouldn't know it at the time, because when the police began investigating, they would just have to take Amanda's word for it that they're friends or that they don't have any problems. But if they had investigated more with the other roommates and really try to tease out, what are the relationships like, I think it would have been very quickly evident that Amanda was just plain lying, just lying about and minimizing the actual relationship, right? And now that I look back on it, okay, I look at this early interview with Amanda Knox, and I want to play a clip of this, right, where she's talking about the crime scene, and she's talking about discovering the body, right, and she laughs as she talks about maybe hearing people screaming about discovering the body and how they saw a foot. And then Amanda says, "Oh, and I imagine like a foot like separated from the body." That's a very violent thought, by the way. There's just because someone said they saw a foot, that doesn't mean. I mean, it's like a Rorschach test, right? Yet it doesn't have to mean that somebody severed the foot, right? But it's funny how Amanda, in her imagination, she imagined something terribly, terribly violent. Okay, and that just came out of her imagination. Just because someone says they saw a foot, another person could say, "Oh, a foot under the blanket," right? It doesn't mean it's separated from the body. But Amanda imposes this kind of imagination of something very violent happening to Meredith. So that suggests that she has unconsciously like very violent thoughts towards Meredith, right? It's just an idea. Like, I'm not proving anything, but it's something that occurs to me, right? And then when she says, "Oh, and I imagined a severed foot," and then she laughs about it. She laughs about it. I mean, like, I don't know that. Now she's going to say, "Oh, I was nervous," blah blah blah. But you know what? I mean, hey, everything's on the table. I mean, if you're capable of spontaneously laughing about imagining a former roommate, okay, that someone you lived with, and their foot being separated from their body, and then you laugh about it, well, anyway, let me just play this, because this, I think, really, this to me is kind of troubling. So let's just go ahead and play this here, and let's see what you guys think of this. Hold on. Okay, here it goes. Okay, hold on. Let me play this. Okay, so you guys can't mistake she was laughing about that, right? So anyway, so if I were a police investigating, I mean, now this was obviously well after the investigation, but that's something that strikes me. Okay, and so as I'm looking back on this case, as I'm looking at Amanda, looking back, do I think she actually was guilty? Okay, I can't let that go. I mean, that is a data point. Okay, and so and obviously the other thing too is that as Amanda looks back on Meredith, okay, every time she's asked about, "Oh, can you put yourself in Meredith's place, or isn't this also like a tragedy for Meredith?" She always has, I think, a very unconvincing way of trying to explain to people that she really does care about Meredith, and she always has kind of an unconvincing way of explaining why she hasn't reached out to Meredith's family. Okay, now I agree that just standing alone, okay, if you have been, let's say, charged and convicted of the murder of somebody's daughter, okay, it's always going to be uncomfortable to try to reach out to that family. Okay, but maybe it is also true that because Amanda hasn't really been exonerated, okay, she's been acquitted, but she hasn't really been exonerated. So there is room for people to still wonder whether she actually killed Meredith. So that may explain why, she's very uncomfortable with the family. But also, I think we can fairly question whether Meredith really, I don't know, whether she's really being honest about how she feels about Meredith. Okay, and if she's being dishonest, okay, if Amanda is being dishonest about Meredith, well, then that tells me that she is being willfully dishonest about something that is very central to the actual potential motive in this case, right? So let me play another clip where I have a lot of trouble with Amanda's responses. Okay, so let me play another one. Hold on, and this one really bothers me. So let's see what you guys think of this. Okay, guys. Okay, before she even talks, okay, this is important because when she's asked about how she feels about Meredith, okay, instead of just telling you directly, how do I feel? Okay, she's overcome by how she feels about what she's going to say. Okay, now this is really important. Instead of having direct access to exactly how she feels about Meredith, her response is, oh my God, I have to talk about this. Okay, and I think you don't have to be a psychologist to see that her immediate, oh my God, that's not directly saying how she feels about Meredith. That's her trouble. She feels troubled by having to talk about Meredith. Okay. And that bothers me. All right. So let's see what she actually goes on to say, because this to me is really the problem. Okay. Okay, so there, that bothers me too, because now she becomes invested in this massive explanation. Okay, and this is the problem I have with Amanda Knox. Instead of just telling you how she actually feels about somebody, okay, instead of telling you how she actually feels about something, it's like, oh, I have to deal with this. And then instead of just telling you how she feels, she has to give you this massive explanation. Okay. And I always have suspicion when someone is more invested in the explanation of something than just telling you the thing they're supposed to tell you. Okay. How do you feel about Meredith? It's all, first of all, oh my God, I have to talk about this. And then it's like the explanation. And now let's hear her explanation. To me, it just rings completely problematic. Okay, so let's just see what happens here. Okay, this is completely unbelievable. All right, and it's amazing. I mean, I don't know how to say this. There's something very special about a person who can say something with a straight face that is completely unbelievable. All right. And it's also interesting because the question is, how do you feel about Meredith? Okay. And first it's, oh my God. And then it's, okay, let's get into the explanation. And then instead of just telling you how she feels, she says, I always put myself in her shoes. Okay. That doesn't tell you how she feels. Again, it's sort of like a proposal. It doesn't ring to me like direct truth. Okay, it's like she's proposing something. Oh, I always put myself in. And secondly, there is nothing in Amanda Knox's background and behavior that suggests that she really puts herself in Meredith's shoes, or if she does it, maybe once in a while. But no, she says she always puts herself in Meredith's shoes. That is just completely unbelievable. All right. Now, can I prove that she's lying? I don't have to prove she's lying. Okay. It is something very unbelievable to say. Okay. But now let's see what she says in the same breath. She says, I always put myself in Meredith's shoes. And let's watch how she continues the sentence. And then you can see that this is really messed up. Okay. So this is how she puts herself in Meredith's shoes. She puts herself in Meredith's shoes not by telling you how she feels. We don't even know at this point, after all this hemming and hawing, we don't even know how she feels. But now we have to hear that she puts herself in Meredith's shoes, and then in the same breath, she starts talking about herself. Okay, so I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to say right now, this is just really crazy. And in fact, I want to play a little more of this clip because she goes on, I think, just to show how self-absorbed she is as she talks about supposedly putting herself in someone's shoes. This is to me just amazing. So let's watch this. Yeah, isn't that wonderful? She's haunted by this like survivor's guilt kind of thing. I mean, this is like, I don't know. I mean, she is really hurting herself. I can't believe her attorneys let her get on television and shoot herself this badly. This looks terrible. And if I were Meredith's family, I mean, this would give me no consolation whatsoever. So, but let's just watch how she continues to put her foot in her mouth. I'm sorry, but this is just not very flattering. Okay, and this is the other thing too. I mean, this is very unconvincing because She doesn't sound the slightest bit scared. Okay. And when you look back to 2007, how she was behaving after the murder, okay, if she really thought there was a mystery about who had killed Meredith and that maybe that person could also kill her, okay, I don't see any evidence back in 2007 that she ever acted that scared about being killed by whoever killed Meredith. I mean, that's very important. So this here, when she talks about, oh, I thought about, she doesn't sound very troubled. I think she's just manufacturing a lot of chaff. This is just a lot of, she's just manufacturing a lot of BS, basically, in my opinion. So this really bothers me. But let's keep watching because she's going to say something else that really bothers me.
Those sort of thoughts go through my mind, and I keep thinking, wow, like a horrible thing happened to me that usually happens to men. Usually happens
Okay. Oh my God. She says a horrible thing happened to me. A horrible thing happened to me. Okay. I mean, again, the question was, how do you feel about Meredith? Okay. And then she says, I always put myself in her shoes. And then she starts talking about herself. And then she says, a horrible thing happened to me. Okay. I mean, and believe me, she keeps going. This is incredible. This is actually one of the most incredible things I've ever seen. And I have been diagnosed with a personality disorder. So let's just watch this.
disenfranchised men. I'm a young woman. Young women don't often get wrongly accused. It's more often that a young woman, is going to be raped or murdered. And so I think about that and how countless women before her have suffered that fate. But this year, I've been thinking about Meredith's mom.
Okay. Now we have emotion. Okay. Let's just go on with this.
It's the first year that I put myself in Meredith's mom's shoes.
Okay, it's the first time I put myself in Meredith's mom's shoes. Okay, that to me is important. I don't even really believe her necessarily, but now she's admitting that it's the first time. Okay, now let's watch. Let's watch how she puts herself in Meredith's mom's shoes. This is going to be important. Let's watch this. And also, let's wonder, like, is this real crying or I mean, on some level, she is accessing emotion. I'm not going to say this is not emotional, but let's just watch. Let's watch this.
And I'm thinking about that for my own daughter. How I
Okay, I put myself in her mom's shoes, but I'm thinking about it for my own daughter. Okay, so right there, we're wondering, is she accessing emotion because of her daughter, or is it Meredith's mom? Every time she proposes that she's thinking about somebody else, it comes right back to her world. Okay, but let's watch this. This to me is fascinating.
I want the world to be a better place for her than it was for me, and that it was for Meredith.
Oh my God. Okay. See, she accidentally said something she didn't want to say. She says, "I hope the world will be a better place for me," and then she says, "For Meredith." I mean, this right here. I'm just going to say right now, I don't have to reach the point of determining whether or not she has a narcissistic personality disorder, whether she's a psychopath. But what I see right here, I see a person who has no handle on the truth. Okay, and they can just lie straight to your face. Okay, except I don't think she has control of her lying. I think there's something going on with Amanda that she's so disengaged from the truth, from the emotional truth, from the emotional truth of a situation. Okay, that she is like lost in a kaleidoscope of possibilities and she's not even in touch with the truth. All right. And so, right here, I see the profile of a person who is totally disengaged from their internal emotions, right? I'm not going to go here and I'm not going to come around and say, like, oh, psychopaths, they don't have feelings. I think the important thing is not whether you have feelings or you don't have feelings. I think the thing is whether you're connected to your feelings, right? And I see a person here who is not connected to their feelings, right? And so they're sort of in this disconnected, sort of detached, alienated, dissociated state where they don't have connection to their feelings, and so all they can do is propose things, okay, without even knowing how they feel, okay. And every time she says and proposes that she's thinking about other people and she's putting herself in their shoes, she just comes right back and talks about herself. So I'm going to make a part two of this, right? But right here, I'm just going to say, I've got a problem with Amanda, okay? And I think it's problematic that she tells massive lies, massive dishonesty around a very core motive of this case, which is maybe somebody very close to Meredith wanted her dead, okay? And so I'm going to make a part two on this, but I really appreciate your patience and thanks for watching.